Do it.
With the stories that matter from every part of our country. There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor. Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world, but look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What does she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace Saturday nights from 6 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
Good evening, everybody. This is GB News, and we're crossing live now to The Late Show live in Washington, D.C. with Ben Leo. Ben, hello, my friend. What's coming up on the show tonight?
Well, we've definitely got some coffee for the show tonight. I'll tell you that. As you saw our producer Eleanor come on screen. Apologies about that. It's going to be a great night, Alex. It's been a hell of a week for the BBC, for the White House. On the Late Show Live tonight, I'm joined, of course, by my esteemed superstar presenter, Bev Turner, who has an exclusive statement from the White House Press Secretary, Caroline Levitt, in addition to what she's already tweeted today, which was everybody should watch GB News. We're going to be detailing and looking into the background of how we got to this point today, all the way from a week ago when the Telegraph first dropped their story about Panorama splicing President Trump. What happened in the week? What's happened on Friday? Did the BBC reporters this side of the pond, did they get hauled into the White House, as has been reported, for a pretty stern dressing down? All of that to come, and as I said, that exclusive Caroline Levitt comment for GB News viewers. Bev Turner's right next to me now. This is The Late Show Live. Let's do this. Hello, good evening. Thank you for your company. On The Late Show Live tonight, well, I guess there's only one story. The White House says, watch GB News. It comes after Director General Tim Davie resigned today as the BBC boss, including Deborah Turness as well, the CEO of BBC News. After, of course, that President Trump video that was doctored by Panorama. Trump's press secretary, Caroline Levitt, tonight has said BBC News is dying because they are an anti-Trump fake news outlet. Everyone should watch GB News. I'm Ben Leo. This is The Late Show Live, and your night's just getting started. Right, let's get stuck into this, shall we? Welcome along to a very special edition of The Late Show Live on GB News. President Trump, of course, is known as the Peace President, but the new key fired at the BBC on Friday night has now landed, and it sparks the resignation of Davey and Turness at the BBC. Well, tonight, the White House has issued a stern warning to the rest of the fake news mainstream media. Press Secretary Caroline Levitt has said BBC News is dying because they are anti-Trump fake news. Everyone, said Levitt, should watch GB News. Well, Bev Turner has the full story, and she's with me now in the Late Show Live studio. Bev, nice to see you. What
Good
a day.
evening.
What a 48 hours.
What a 48 hours. What a week, really, Ben. And I think it's worth just reflecting on how we've got to this point, because it's been a bit of a whirlwind for us as journalists in the White House this week and in Washington, D.C., because on Monday, Gordon Rayner started Late Show Live with me. Now, he's the Daily Telegraph journalist who had exposed this dossier. And he talked about the Trump clip that we've now seen many, many times, the Panorama documentary that cast Donald Trump as inciting the insurrection. That was on the front page of the British papers on Tuesday. I was in the briefing room on Tuesday with the Telegraph journalists, with the Mail journalists, with the Express, all the people from the UK, and we were waiting for a statement from Caroline Levitt. We got nothing. Then on Wednesday, the news of the Gaza coverage from that same dossier emerged. Again, nothing from the White House. Thursday, the way that they had depicted the trans issue was exposed. Nothing from the White House. Now, we were all, as British journalists, curious, because this isn't their MO, is it? They don't hold back. They come out swinging if they don't agree with something. And then on Friday, you had Rob Crilly, the journalist from Telegraph, in the studio here, who had broke the story. So this has been a Telegraph story from Monday. And Rob said that Gary Donoghue, the BBC's broadcaster here in Washington, their anchor, their political editor, had been in the White House. So the clock was then ticking. What were they going to say? How was this going to be treated by the White House? And on Friday, Caroline Levitt came out and she said this was purposefully dishonest, selectively editing by the BBC. It is evidence they are 100% fake news. Still nothing from the president. He goes to Florida for the weekend. Yesterday, nothing. And then today, we hear of the resignation of Tim Davey and Deborah Turness, head of BBC News. 6 p.m. statement UK time on a Sunday. They've had a busy weekend, clearly working out what to say. And then I was with you today at lunch, and I had been messaging the White House, of course, all week about this, because we were all very keen for a response. And Caroline Levitt gave me this quote that I think we can use. And she says, the White House proudly called out their purposeful fake news, that's BBC, of course, and this resignation is an admission of guilt. And she then added the line, everyone should watch GB News. Now, I promise you I did not ask her to say that, but obviously as a journalist that works for a channel of which I'm incredibly proud, that was very rewarding. She's clearly a very wise woman. And now I think there are so many questions, Ben, that need to be asked about why this, why now?
I'd like to know why they waited so long, because you and I and other British journalists this side of the pond were scratching our heads in the week saying, why hasn't the White House responded to this initial, very good Daily Telegraph story about Panorama? It was silence, and it was kind of like, well, what are they doing? Are they waiting? What's your thoughts on why they did that?
I think that they were allowing the BBC to leave, or for the personnel within the BBC to leave with as much dignity as possible. I genuinely think that was the president behaving admirably, and he could have come out and demanded the resignation. He didn't do it. They kept quiet. I'm sure they knew what was going on behind the scenes, and then these two major figures at the BBC have gone. But I think what's really important, because what we're about to see now is a pile on with a lot of the left, a lot of the establishment, capitally establishment media in the UK, to depict this as Donald Trump dictating the agenda. And we have to remember that this dossier exposed the BBC not just for depicting Donald Trump as something that he wasn't on that day. This was about the coverage of Gaza, the coverage of trans. We could think of so many issues that where with the BBC you get one version of events. Global warming is another one. How they feel about the Liz Truss premiership is another one. How they feel about the whole of the Trump administration in term 1 and term 2. How the BBC depicts the Pakistani rape gangs issue.
Yeah.
We know there are big stories that they do not deal with due impartiality, and that's the concern.
Yeah, the people today, the rhetoric is, the conversation is, especially from those of the left side of the argument, saying that the White House, President Trump is getting involved in UK media affairs. Well, no, I mean, I'd argue President Trump was there reacting to something that was done to him, and really just gave the BBC just the slightest of nudge over the cliff they were already perilously hanging off for many, many years. You can go back, I don't just blame Tim Davie, but you can go back for decades. Look, Savile, Hugh Edwards, you know, the Glastonbury situation. You can go on and on and on. And I've been saying tonight, Bev, this is partly, and by the way, I'm not dancing on the BBC's grave tonight. I think it's actually quite a sad occasion that what was once a well-respected, proud British institution, I used to love the BBC, has now resorted to being called out by the President of the United States.
There are elements of the BBC that I do still love. I love some of their entertainment programming, some of their coverage this weekend of all of the remembrance services. The BBC does that beautifully. I mean, you might say with 50 million lots of 170 quid, they should do it beautifully. But they do some things well. When it comes to news, they have dropped the ball over the last however many years, and the British public no longer feel that they represent who they are. And that is the reason that GB News is doing so well. Yeah. Because the people sat at home watching TV watch what we say and they go, I agree, I feel like that, you're representing my life. And the BBC no longer do that.
I want to show you and viewers back home and listeners a clip. Rob Crilly from the Daily Telegraph, the guy who initially penned that Panorama story a week or so ago, which kicked off this whole fiasco. Rob Crilly was on The Late Show Live on Friday, and he told me about the moment that the BBC's Gary O'Donoghue, one of their top Washington reporters here, very nice guy, nice chap, he was mysteriously in the White House on Friday, as you said, Bev. This is the moment Rob Crilly told me about that. We'll discuss it afterwards. Let's take a look.
Made an appointment. I went in, sat down on her sofa, very well appointed. She's moved offices, the fire was roaring, rather cosy atmosphere. And of course she was well aware of the story. And so as soon as I put it to her that, you know, there were questions to be answered by the BBC, she was only too happy. And she is a very slick operator. She knows how to give a good story. She knows the mind of the president as well. And she delivered, you read the quote there, I think she delivered a real sign of the fury of the White House in her response. And it was rather amusing.
Have the BBC been in and around the White House this week since the Panorama story dropped? And I mean, who's the reporter? Is it Cassie Kay? They
have a whole slate of reporters. I mean, you also have Gary O'Donoghue, the reporter who got the interview with Trump actually earlier this year.
How have they been this week?
He was at the White House today, I noticed. I don't know if he was in for a meeting, for a dressing down, or quite what. Now, they come and go and do their reporting. They're part of the press pool. They may, for all I know, one of their radio correspondents may have been on Air Force One this evening. I suspect that would have been rather frosty.
So there we go, bit of a nugget of information there from Crilly. Gary O'Donoghue was in the White House mysteriously, he's not always in there. Do you think we can assume from this now that the BBC were dragged into the White House for a rollicking and then that's how we've ended up today?
I don't know. We might find out this week. We don't know what's gone on behind the scenes. I don't think, contrary to public opinion, that Donald Trump would have the power to get the DG kicked up, you know, forcibly resign his job. I don't think so. But I think what it's also important to say is this is an opportunity for the BBC to really genuinely look at how they handle their news editorial. I know from people within the BBC newsroom that they have concerns that they can't relate to real people, partly because they're staffed maybe by a certain type of public school boy and girl. I don't know what it is, and I'm not sure they know what it is. But there is a groupthink mentality at the BBC. There is a certain type of person. Like, we will joke. People who, you know, we will joke, we'll never get a job on the BBC. Now, that shouldn't be a joke, because actually, all I want from the BBC, I don't want them to necessarily be pro-Trump or pro-Conservative or pro-Reform. And Nigel, there's another topic. You know exactly how the BBC are going to cover Nigel Farage and Reform. I want both sides of every story. That is what the British people want, because if you don't show the British people both sides of every story, you're assuming the British people are stupid.
And do you know what else is quite alarming? I agree with you, by the way, but it's the reaction from certain BBC stars or even the likes of Adam Bolton, former Sky News star presenter, who don't see and don't understand what the BBC have done wrong. people still saying, well, hang on a minute, Trump did incite this or that, or he was responsible for that. They don't understand or see the problem in splicing together two separate pieces of speech, 52 minutes apart, to make a man say something the complete opposite of what he did say. That's alarming, the reaction to it. Nick Robinson, John Simpson as well.
But that's the mindset that I'm talking about. Whether it's almost like on an individual level, I think there are people who work at the BBC that just don't want to be criticised by their peers. It's a crowd of people sometimes, I think, maybe in news, who they don't want to be judged. They're pretty scared of getting it wrong or saying the wrong thing and therefore being cast out or censored by their friendship group at the work or whatever it is. We don't suffer from that same sort of fear here. And so it gives rise to a kind of, we have an oxygenated news empire here at GB News. Like it is, all views are welcome here. And we often get criticised. People will message the show all the time, why am I having to listen to all these lefties on GB News? And we say, because that's much more fun. Whereas at the BBC, you know that anybody that is centre-right or thinks differently to the steps outside of the Overton window of what is acceptable to say on whatever particular topic it is, they're going to be the butt of the joke at BBC News. And while they are like that, they're also laughing at the public, and the public are not stupid.
Yeah, well said. And actually, I say to my producers all the time, you know, Bev, I'd rather do 2 hours of arguing and debating with people I disagree with completely, because maybe I'll learn something.
Correct.
Maybe they'll learn something. You know, I don't want to live in an echo chamber where we're just regurgitating other people's ideas. All perspectives, you know, make us a better society, better informed people.
And I know Tim Davie, I know Deborah Turnus personally. They're not bad people. I don't wish them any harm as individuals. I wish them nothing but luck in the rest of their, what will probably be successful careers. But there needed to be consequences in 2025. And there needs to be massive questions asked about who is the BBC and who are they talking to, because they're not talking to the British public.
Yeah, OK, well said, Bev. Thank you very much, and great work today. Hopefully lots more in the week to come tomorrow. Well, joining me now to discuss the rest of this bombshell story is the associate editor at the Daily Telegraph, Gordon Rayner. I mean, the Telegraph, of course, key to this story, key to, I mean, some people, Gordon, good evening, thanks for your company, saying that it was also the Telegraph which has delivered this fatal blow to the BBC. Just tell us, please, how it's been from your side of things in the newsroom this week in London and how it's all sort of manifested.
Well, I mean, it's been non-stop. You know, GB News has done a very good job of keeping across this story. We thank you for that. It felt, I think I probably said this to Bev earlier in the week, it felt as though Tim Davie's position was pretty much untenable from the moment that we revealed that Panorama documentary fakery, as Donald Trump refers to it. Because he, not only did he know about this quite some time ago, but he's the guy who was in charge of the organisation, has been for 5 years, who has allowed this culture to develop at the BBC, where, very much as Bev was saying there, people who work at the BBC think they can get away with this sort of thing because they think the boss won't care and won't do anything about it. And that's why they've got themselves into this awful position that they're in now.
Yeah, and Gordon, I don't want to do sort of a victory lap of backslapping, but President Trump, well, Caroline Levitt, rather, his press secretary, mentioned GB News today, but President Trump himself, in his Truth Social tweet, heaped praise on your publication, the Daily Telegraph. Do you feel like you're doing a service to the great British public here? I mean, do you feel bad in any way for bringing down the BBC, or, I mean, do they deserve it?
Well, we haven't brought down the BBC, and I take no pleasure from people losing their jobs, and I really mean that. But I think, as Bev said, you know, and as you were saying earlier, the BBC is something which has been cherished by the British people for a long time. I grew up with watching the BBC. I'm very proud of the fact that people in foreign countries always used to say, "Oh, you've got the best TV in the world in Britain. You know, you've got the BBC. It's great." The World Service has been this incredible thing that people in repressed societies around the world could turn to get, what they thought was going to be impartial news. And that's what I'd like to see continuing. I don't think it's necessarily lost forever, but it's not happening at the moment. And whoever replaces Tim Davie has got a big job on their hands to restore that trust, that impartiality that is meant to be the absolute foundation of the BBC.
Yeah, and Gordon, I'd just like your thoughts finally on whether you think this is the end of the matter. Of course, we all know President Trump doesn't drop grudges quite easily. He's had 2 scalps today with the resignations, which he's posted on his Truth Social. You know, he seems, I guess, happy with what's happened. Will he now, though, do you think, consider maybe suing the BBC, as he's done with CBS and ABC News here in America?
Okay, I think that's entirely possible. I suspect that part of the reason that he took so long to respond, as you were talking about earlier, was, you know, there's been a lot going on in America, obviously, with the budget not being passed. I think maybe that they were just, you know, had other things on their minds for most of the week. I suspect he's not necessarily going to let this go. I also think that this may not be the end of the resignations, because you know, the people that made that Panorama program behind this story, we've heard nothing about what's happening to them. And also Jonathan Monroe, who is the head of global news at the BBC. He's responsible for, you know, BBC Arabic, for example, which we've been talking about with the you know, bias in their reporting. He's the guy that in a meeting where the Panorama program was discussed, said there wasn't a problem. The British people had not been misled, and it was just normal editing. Well, if that's what he thinks, then I'm not sure he's in the right job.
Just, Gordon, one more. Thank you for your time. You're being very generous. But do you think Downing Street's been involved at all this week with the Trump White House? Do you think President Trump would have given Keir Starmer a heads up, bearing in mind for the simple fact that it's the state broadcaster and so on? Any involvement, any word on the street in Westminster?
I don't know the answer to that. I think that Downing Street has obviously been watching this story developing. We know that Lisa Nandy has been looking at it. She has made it very clear to the BBC that they needed to do something, that they needed to take our reporting seriously. As to whether or not Starmer and Donald Trump spoke about it, I don't know.
Yeah. Gordon, thank you very much. Really appreciate your company tonight. Great work at The Telegraph, you and your reporters, and we'll catch up soon. Thanks very much. That's Gordon Rayner, Associate Editor at The Daily Telegraph. Right, let us know your thoughts, gbnews.com/your say. The big question for me, guys at home, viewers and listeners, is, as I just asked Gordon, will President Trump now pursue some legal action against the BBC? He's done it with ABC News here in America. $16 million he settled for. He did it with CBS News, another $16 million as well. gbnews.com/your say. Keep those coming in. Right, later in the show, we'll hear from the mother of 3 who's raising her children here in America alone after the father of those kids self-deported from the United States. He was fearful that ICE, the immigration authorities here, were going to haul him up, round him up rather, and kick him out of America. Anyway, he's gone back to Kenya after fearing President Trump would do just that and tear his family apart. But next, I'll speak to a senior former BBC boss after the Director General and Chief Executive of BBC News quit, of course, over the doctored Donald Trump footage. This is The Late Show Live. Back in just a tick.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I ever got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to The Late Show Live with me, Ben Leo. Now, before we get back to the BBC story and all the bombshell revelations tonight, President Trump has been speaking after watching an NFL match in Washington.
Looks like we're getting very close to the shutdown. We'll never agree to give any substantial money or any money to really prisoners, illegals that come into our country. And I think the Democrats understand that. And it looks like we're getting close to the shutdown ending. You'll know very soon. Thank you very much.
So President Trump there speaking moments ago, talking about the US government shutdown, which has been plaguing America actually for the past 4, 5, 6 weeks. Breaking news in the past couple of minutes, senators here in Washington, D.C. have reached a deal to finally, hallelujah, end the shutdown. The agreement was negotiated in part by a few GOP senators, Republicans, and they have more than enough, quote unquote, Democratic support to finally end the government shutdown, which is good news if you're visiting the likes of Washington, D.C., because it means the zoo, the museums and so on, the botanical gardens, which I heard are very beautiful, will be back open imminently. We'll bring you more on that very, very shortly. Right, joining me now down the line to discuss the breaking BBC story tonight is the former head of religion at the BBC, Akhil Ahmed. Bev Turner is still here with me now. Akhil, good evening. Thank you for your company. Wow, what a week for the BBC. I described it tonight as kind of a fatal blow because it seems and it feels like this is, or it needs to be at least, the start of a new dawn at the BBC. They really need to reflect on how they've been running their operation for the past, I'd argue, at least past 10 years. Just give me your thoughts, please, on what we've seen today and indeed over the past week.
Well, I think, you're right. It's a great time for the BBC to think now about what happens next. I think if you look at the audience, if you look at what's happening to audiences all over the world, the changes in platforms, how people access information, whether it be television programmes or news or in whatever way, it's all very different. And the BBC has tried. It was a front runner with iPlayer many, many years ago. It's tried in the last 5 to 10 years to do things. Maybe it's not got it right. And I think much as this is, as you yourself have said, and other guests I've been listening to on the show have said, nobody wants to see anybody lose their jobs. And particularly, I know Tim a little bit. I don't know Deborah at all, but I know who she is. I know Tim. He's tried his. He's been around a while. He's been there 20 years at the BBC. He's done a lot of jobs. He's tried to kind of like arrest what's going on around him, the changes that in how people access things and what that means for the BBC, going into license fee, charter renewal, etc. And I think this is a moment. I think you're right. It's a real moment to assess what are the priorities and what should be the priorities going forward. Is the BBC as it stands fit for purpose going forward, and should the license fee, do people want to pay the license fee in the way that it is, and does everybody get value for money for it? So I think it's actually an interesting time going forward. It's not a death blow. It means a change to the BBC, because I think that was coming anyway, even internally and externally from the government. We're talking about what they might like to see, and I think what we're going to see now is a discussion about searching into the soul of what the BBC should be. So I think, moving forward, interesting times.
Okay, our superstar presenter, Karen Cahill on the Late Show Live. Bev Turner's here with me. Bev.
I'm interested in this culture of groupthink at the BBC. In your experience, when you were there as head of religion, if anybody tried to issue a sentence in a meeting maybe about a topic that was perhaps counter the overriding narrative, how would they be treated in the room?
Well, you've got to remember, people who are working in all broadcasters, whether they're working at the BBC or Channel 4, they go between. I worked at Channel 4, the BBC. I worked for IT. I worked for lots of different people, and I think there's the culture's similar-ish in very many of these kind of like mainstream broadcasters. What I would say is, I agree with you on the groupthink. I mean, I've written about this many years ago. I think there is groupthink. I know that. I'm not part of that group. You may hear from my accent and the education that I had, and all the kind of things that where I come from in this country and where my parents came from, a very, very different background than a lot of the people that I worked with. And I think that groupthink has changed over time. And actually, I think that, as I said, this is a time to think about what they want to do and go forward. What I would say is, I remember once being lectured by somebody once in a meeting, and they talked about, they were trying to tell me about, we were having a conversation about, numbers of people working, etc. And they just lectured me about working class people, saying, it's all, class is a real issue at Akhil. And I thought, look, you're multi-generational, middle class. I grew up in a 202 down with an outside toilet. My dad drove to this country. You know what? It's intersectional. You can be working. Believe it or not, you can be working class, and you cannot, and you don't have to be a white male who's failing, as it seems to be the only thing that you're allowed to be if you're working class. So you're right. The groupthink that it does exist. That's not everybody, but I think what you've seen with some of the things that have happened in this week, with the the expose by the Telegraph, all the things in that particular conversations that have happened. Yeah, there's an element of groupthink, because I have to be honest with you. You could argue, and I don't want to get into this now because it's a really nuanced kind of conversation. I can imagine the conversations that were had about, have you covered the entirety of the speech, as opposed to splicing two things together. I don't care about that, because ultimately I think when you're talking about the President of the United States, knowing what kind of individual he is, knowing what America's like, full stop, in terms of being litigious, but particularly with President Trump, would you take a risk? I don't know. Now, the thing is, this was made by an independent production company. And what we've got to remember is that there are supposed to be all sorts of caveats and chains in the command, etc., that you would put in and have conversations. And I always remember, after the, if you remember the Queen Gate story, all those years ago, there was issues around editing there, and whether or not there was a viewer trust, I think was the phrase that we used at that time. I remember from that point onwards, to this day, whoever I'm working for, when I go into an edit suite, I always say, is there something you want to tell me now, as opposed to it becoming an issue later on? Because we can work it out, we can deal with it, rather than you telling me, rather than us finding out afterwards that you've done something that actually is incorrect. And I think that's what has not happened, and I think we need to go back to that particular mindset again, which is, yes, you might have covered the entirety of the speech, but if you've had to do it by splicing two things together, then you have destroyed possibly the viewer trust as well.
Yeah.
Akhil, I think the other issue, and this is the reason why Turness and Davey fell on their sword, and I argue they probably wouldn't have otherwise, is they both knew, and indeed the BBC chairman Samir Shah, they all knew about this Panorama potential bombshell 6 months ago in April, and we've heard nothing about it. You have to assume they've sat on it, maybe hoping it would go away. It was only until the Telegraph broke the story that they came out and said, oh, mea culpa, sorry, and they've resigned. So I don't think, I mean, you can tell me, would they have resigned if they'd got a hold of it and ahead of it 6 months ago?
I think with regards to Tim, I think there's a real issue here about, unfortunately, I think there's been a build-up over the last year or so of particular things happening, one thing after another, and I think it was I think at some point he may have liked to have gone under his own steam. So I think that actually he says he has, he says it's his decision to leave. I think it was difficult for him to carry on, I have to be honest with you. I think the point you're making about, whether or not they think they may have got away with this or whatever, I don't know, to be honest with you, because they obviously thought that they'd had a conversation, that they debated it, And whether you agree or disagree, we don't need to go into that, because I think we're pretty clear that we agree that they made a mistake. Whether you agree or disagree on the Trump thing, they decided to actually, that they thought that they'd made the right decision. Right, now that's an issue that we could look at, but they thought they'd made the right decision. So with this resurfacing later on, it's just one of many things which I think has made it difficult for him. Now with Deborah Turner, said she's fallen on her sword. She's done the kind of thing that we don't see a lot of these days of people in authority, and that is accepting that the book stops with you. Even if she, she could argue there were so many lines below it got to her, she would have known the detail. The fact of the matter is, I respect the fact that she has not tried to, deputy heads will roll, as that phrase used to go. She has gone herself, and I think that's something to think about, actually, when we look at how people behave when they're caught.
I'm just looking at Tim Davies' statement here, actually, and there's no apology in here. Now, that's slightly Tim Davies' style. He's on the front foot a lot of the time, isn't he? And that's why he's been so successful. And he came from the corporate world. He came from marketing for companies like Coca-Cola, as opposed to coming from within the media. And he's Pepsi, and he wouldn't like that. And he's done very well in terms of monetizing. Thank you. You wouldn't thank me for that. But he's done very well in terms of monetizing the BBC globally. So selling the profitable programs all around the world, and as you say, trying very hard to make that transition when people aren't watching linear TV in the same way. And maybe he was already thinking of going. I mean, the list of events which he's had to oversee which haven't gone well include that Glastonbury coverage with that absolute horror show of a rapper saying death to the IDF repeatedly. I mean, again, that's not Tim Davies' immediate responsibility. His job description is not to stop that sort of coverage going out, but I guess it raised an awareness of maybe systems that weren't working within the BBC, which are necessary in 2025 when everything is streamed. Do you think he's got out of this well? Like, will he? I'm not sure he's getting out of this under a cloud of shame. Do you? Like, I think Tim Davies will probably go on and work for other organisations now. This isn't very much on his desk to some degree. I think he probably will be employed again.
No, it's a really good point. I think if he'd left a year earlier, he'd be in a much stronger position. It really depends on the role that he's going for and whether or not that's a role that requires somebody with a bit of kind of editorial nous. Because clearly there've been quite a few things. It's been a difficult year. In that sense, a difficult couple of years, or definitely a different year. And I think, it's not the end. He's not. I'm trying to think how old Tim is. He's probably around about, I don't want to say it, but he's probably just a couple of years older than me, I should imagine. And he's got plenty of time to work. I agree with you, but I think he's not leaving in shame. But I think he will be forever remembered as the DG who lost his job because of the the program about Trump. And Trump complaining, and it becoming a kind of like a big incident in that respect. So I think you're right. I don't think it's shame as such, but it's under a cloud, isn't it? And actually, what we don't know is how long does that go on for? Because there are people who've left the job like this in the past, and they've gone on to great things. And there have been some people who've left this job, and it's not necessarily been, they've not been able to get any work after that, because it is difficult to get work after you've been the Director General if people think that actually it hadn't gone well for you.
Yeah. Akhil, thank you very much. Appreciate your company. Akhil Ahmed, former head of religion at the BBC. Bev, one of the biggest, before we go to the break, one of the biggest scandals for me at the BBC, it wasn't just the Hugh Edwards scandal in itself, but the fact he was allowed to keep his £300,000 a year pension, courtesy of licence fee payers, because there was no morality clause in his contracts. And bearing in mind the context of Savile from decades earlier, why wouldn't you have a morality clause?
Well, I'm tempted to say that's because everyone at the BBC thinks they're always on the moral high ground anyway, so why would they need that? Because that's just sort of who they are, maybe, but possibly that's a little unkind.
Indeed. Right, thank you, Bev, appreciate it. Coming up next on The Late Show Live, we're going through all of tomorrow's front pages, which will be hitting your shelves back in Blighty imminently. Of course, no prizes for guessing which story is absolutely dominating. But again, if you're just tuning into The Late Show Live tonight, we've got an exclusive statement from Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, for GB News viewers on this breaking story tonight. And the big question I still want to drill down into is, will President Trump be suing the BBC? Back in just a tick.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to The Late Show Live. I'm Ben Leo, and if you're just tuning in tonight, we have an exclusive statement from the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, who has spoken to GB News tonight, well, Bev Turner specifically, on the absolute scandal that's embroiling the BBC. Bev, do you want to do the honours? What did Caroline tell you a bit earlier today?
We were hassling them for a comment all week, but they were obviously letting the BBC get on with it behind the scenes. So today, Caroline Leavitt told me this. The White House proudly called out their purposeful fake news, and this resignation is an admission of guilt. And then she finished by saying everyone should watch GB News. I mean, you know, ladies and gentlemen, if you thought she was an intelligent woman, I'm sure you see her in even higher esteem now.
Yeah, interesting. Lisa Nandy, Bev, this morning, I'm not sure if you caught her, but she was doing the rounds talking about Laura Kuenssberg on the BBC she was speaking to, and she was being asked about the BBC scandal, the situation, but she couldn't help herself, could she? No. Divert attention away to a one GB News, which I guess is quite pertinent to Caroline Leavitt's statement tonight. Let's just remind ourselves, viewers and listeners, what Lisa Nandy, the Culture Secretary, had to say today.
I have complete confidence that both Samir Shah, the chair of the BBC, and Tim Davie are treating this with the seriousness that this demands. I do want to see that response to the Select Committee, and I will, of course, consider it and have further conversations with them about the action that they're taking.
So that that is not the bit that we were talking about. But so I can just elucidate for you what she was talking about. She basically said, she did mention the BBC, and she said, you know, they've got questions to answer. But then she said, I'm very concerned about news and opinion, which she called dangerous, opinionated news, and MPs presenting news shows. Now, Laura Kunsberg, to her credit, said, well, we don't do that on the BBC. She didn't mention GB News, but of course that's what she's talking about. And to be really clear, Nigel Farage, who hosts a show on this channel, that is not strictly a news show, because we abide by the Ofcom regulation, which I think actually is correct in that regard. Nigel's show is officially a current affairs show as opposed to news. So if we have a breaking news show, Nigel is not, under the terms of our licence, allowed to break news, which is precisely why we have the bulletins on this channel. We have very clear news bulletins where opinion is not blended with news. That is, they are straight factual reports. Then it hands over to us, and we obviously are allowed to get our teeth into stuff.
Yeah. And same with the likes of Jacob Rees-Mogg when he was an MP as well. If there was a situation where we had some breaking news, Jacob Rees-Mogg or Nigel Farage could not present that as news. That's because they are not allowed to do news. It's not what they do current affairs. And by the way, Bev, the first I heard of this being an issue was when GB News came on the scene. What about when the likes of David Lammy were taking phone-ins on LBC, when the likes of Emily Thornberry were doing the same, and so on and so on?
Even when Nigel used to present on LBC, oh, he wasn't an MP, of course, at that point. How quickly time has sort of gone elastic, hasn't it, in the last 5 years? But I think it's clear that she better not come after GB News because of the mistakes of the BBC.
Yeah.
That would feel very wrong.
All right, big question I have for viewers and listeners is, will President Trump go ahead and now sue the BBC, as he's done with 2 broadcasters here in the US? Or one man who may shed some light on any future possibilities of that is the CEO of Latino Wall, Tony Delgado, who joins us live from New York. Tony, thanks for your company. Do you think President Trump will sue the BBC now? He doesn't forgive grudges easily, does he?
No, absolutely. I mean, his victory against 60 Minutes is a testament to the president's relentlessness, and I absolutely think he should sue the BBC. If you look at what they did, you know, this isn't commentary. This isn't a reporter's opinion. This is them intentionally editing the president's words. And look at the repercussions, right? That clip was used to cancel the president's bank accounts, his social media accounts, to completely go after his businesses, his privately owned businesses. So I absolutely think that he should sue, and I think he'll win.
Yeah, actually, Tony, that's such a good point. We are forgetting in this conversation, in this scandal, the severity in the context of that clip. It was a massive, massive occasion. As he was cancelled. They tried to jail him for it. I'm forgetting anyway. Maybe nobody else is, but I'm underestimating the severity of what the BBC did in that precise moment by splicing that clip. Bev Turner.
He was impeached, of course, for that, and he was cleared in the end. But Tony, I'm interested just from you. What is the perception of the BBC in America? Because people that I talk to still hold it in very high esteem, and a lot of people tonight, because thanks to Caroline Levitt, will be saying, what's GB News? I might find them. Literally, she's followed by people all over the world. But tell me, first of all, how do Americans perceive the BBC?
Similar to... Yeah, I think, unfortunately, you know, the BBC, similar to CNN and the New York Times here in the United States, is one of these legacy news outlets, which was once prestigious, which was once trusted as a non-biased news source, and is now kind of showing their true cards and their true colors of being super biased in their coverage and being a leftist kind of extremist organization, similar to Twitter before Elon Musk took it over.
Yeah, what a bizarre couple of years it's been, all, you know, from the start of COVID up until now, just a complete bulldozing of so many social norms, media landscapes, the conversations we talk about, the issues and so on, the Overton window shifting. Tony, thank you so much for your company, really appreciate it, and we'll catch up soon. gbnews.com/your say. I promise to get to your comments very shortly, but coming up on the show tonight.
We're not chasing stories, we're already there.
It's about patience.
Not rushing to be the first, but striving to get it right.
To get to the truth.
And also, This reminds me about BBC Verify. Could you imagine the work GB News could do with a £40 million a year budget, 60-odd journalists? BBC Verify is meant to be there to make sure that the BBC didn't do exactly what it did with President Trump. You know, produce fake news, close down BBC Verify. Back in just a tick on The Late Show Live.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I ever got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. Let's take a look at some of the newspaper front pages hitting the shelves tomorrow, starting with the Metro. Tears of the Crown goes with the Metro. I believe this is a story on, well, I can't see the front page just yet, probably a royal story. I've got it here, actually. Tears of the Crown is, of course, the King's emotional salute at the Cenotaph today for Remembrance Sunday commemorations. I attended a similar service in Washington today. It was very moving indeed. The iPaper, BBC bosses quit over botched Trump film as enemies gather. Front page of the Telegraph tomorrow, Tim Davie quits BBC over bias scandal. The Sun, Big Boss quits over Trump lies. The Mail, BBC bosses quit in disgrace. And the Mail on the right there is bosses, plural. 2 have resigned today. Deborah Turness, the CEO of BBC News, has resigned as well, which, in my opinion, is bigger than Davie's resignation. The Guardian, BBC Director General Tim Davie steps down over Panorama row. And the Daily Mirror, Trump row BBC boss, I quit. And the Times, BBC boss Davie resigns over allegations of bias. And the Daily Express, boss quits over BBC doctoring of Trump speech. Let's get the thoughts now of GB News superstar comedian Paul Cox, who joins us down the line live from London. Paul, good evening. Wow, what a day, eh?
Yeah, what a day. I mean, it's a bit awkward for me, by the way, Ben, because usually when I'm on with Bev, I tell her she's my favourite US presenter. And, of course, when I'm on with you...
Well, Bev's here.
I know. Come on, Bev. When I saw you both together, I was like, oh, no, I'm going to get caught out now. But, of course, you are both my favourite. And what a day, by the way, Ben. Yeah, I mean, where do we start with this? Because I think first things first, the BBC have been held, and rightly so, in the past, held high as the standard bearer for journalism. And what we've seen in the last 5 to 10 years, maybe a little bit more, is a degradation of that, which has culminated in what's happening right now. And there would have been, you know, millions of journalists across the globe that would have looked up to the BBC, and they've nothing to look up to anymore, or they've less to look up to, and I'm not sure where it goes from there. Tim Davie has presided over quite the fall in terms of the standard of the BBC. And I learned just from your bit earlier that he was a marketing expert and not a journalist. And I think that's been part of the problem. You wouldn't need BBC Verify if you had journalists in charge, because journalists, you know, they hold themselves to a very high standard, and we're just not seeing that anymore. And they've actually got to have their own Verify service. But interesting, I thought, with Lisa Nandy earlier, she came across as a bit of a youth parliament member. The idea that the Right Honourable Secretary for Culture had absolutely no idea what was going on with potentially the absolutely hugest story globally with regards to media and culture, had no idea exactly what had gone on and just palmed it off, is ludicrous. And I think it's testament to the way the Labour Party have managed this government so far. So, look, Ben, I think this is a much bigger story. We think it's a big story, but I think globally over the next few days, this is going to play out as a very, very big story. I think it's damning for the BBC.
Yeah, Angelina McCarthy's here with us now, political broadcaster and commentator. Angelina, what's your thoughts on what's happened today? America, the White House at the centre of the storm, of course.
Well, I don't think that this clip by the BBC is as damning as we think. Look, it's a documentary film. It came out last year. I think that the goal is they had about, what, 15 seconds? That's what you do in documentary films. You have a very short amount of time to really create the temper and bring out the modes and the emotions of what is going on in the crowd. I was there on January 6th, and the temperament that was in the crowd was very angry. There were people standing, this was during Donald Trump's speech on January 6th, there were people standing on porta potties, jumping up and down. There was a lot of anger in the crowd, and I'm also someone who's been to a lot of different Trump rallies, and they're not typically this temperamental in terms of seeing that anger temperament. So I think the BBC did actually a really good job of capturing that moment and articulating that to the people.
That could be the agitators that were there as well. But what I would say is this. All this coverage of this story, how many of those newspapers mention GB News? Because if Caroline Levitt had come out and said, go and watch ITV, go and watch Channel 4, go and watch Sky, they'd put it in the press, have they today?
Paul, we'll catch up in the next hour. For now, let's get your weather. But Matthew Staslin joins us next, maybe to defend the BBC. Back in just a sec.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Low pressure in charge of our weather for the next few days. Today, a mixture of sunny spells, heavy showers, but mild for the time of year and rather breezy, particularly around the coasts. A wet start this morning, though, across much of Scotland. Outbreaks of rain here, cloudy across Northern Ireland. Elsewhere, a mixture of some bright spells, but areas of showery rain pushing north and eastwards as we move through the morning. Into the afternoon, some of this rain will be heavy at times across the Midlands into East Anglia, North East England as we move through the day. Temperatures generally 12 to 14 Celsius across England and Wales, a little chillier across Northern Ireland and Scotland, here around 11 or 12 Celsius. So just fresher for most compared to the weekend. And then as we move through into this evening time, we can see it remains unsettled across southern parts of England and Wales. Further showers and fairly blustery along the coasts. Areas of showery rain across the northern part of Wales into northern England, southern Scotland, Northern Ireland. Much of Scotland seeing some clear spells this evening. A few showers, particularly particularly in the west, driest conditions in the east, and under any clear spells, temperatures dropping to around 6 or 7 Celsius already. As we move into the early hours, further showers are expected, though they will ease for a time, allowing some longer clear spells to develop. But it remains quite breezy, particularly around the coast, with then further rain heading into southwest England and Wales by the end of the night. Under the clearest skies, temperatures dropping away, a cooler night than of late, 5 or 6 Celsius in the towns and cities. Some mist and fog patches once more, but it's all changed through the day on Tuesday. Cloud and rain pushing northeastwards, accompanied by some brisk winds. It will stay driest across central and northern parts of Scotland, though some showers possible across the islands here, and generally for all an unsettled day to come. Again, some maybe southern and eastern parts holding on to some dry weather, but largely cloudy here. Very mild, 15-16 Celsius, cooler across Scotland.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it?
no,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as
And now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
On the Late Show Live tonight, all the juicy background detail of the White House's war with the BBC, and breaking news in the past couple of minutes, the government shutdown is coming to an end. Hello, good evening. On the Late Show Live tonight, of course, there's only one story doing the rounds. The White House says watch GB News. It comes, of course, after Director General Tim Davie resigned today as BBC News boss, Deborah Turness, also fell on her sword after the Donald Trump video that was doctored by Panorama. President Trump's press secretary Caroline Levitt tonight has said BBC News is dying because they're anti-Trump fake news. Everyone should watch GB News. And breaking news in the last couple of moments, US media is reporting that Republicans and enough Senate Democrats finally have reached a deal to end the government shutdown here in America after 40 long days. I'm Ben Leo, this is The Late Show Live, and welcome to the second hour where the stories get hotter, the pace gets faster, and the brakes have been dropped. Do not go anywhere. Hello, welcome along to a very special edition of The Late Show Live on GB News. The big story, of course, is President Trump. Well, he's known as the peace president, isn't he? But the nuke he fired at the BBC on Friday night has now landed, and it sparks the resignation of Davie and Turness. Well, tonight, the White House has issued a stern warning to the rest of the fake news media. Press Secretary Caroline Levitt has said BBC News is dying because they are anti-Trump fake news. Everyone should watch GB News. Well, look, let's recap what's happened, not just over the last 24 hours, the last 48 hours. Let's look at the last week, a recap of events and how we got to this point today. Well, it all began earlier in the week when the Daily Telegraph reported that Panorama had spliced President Trump's infamous Capitol speech.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight. We fight like hell. We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
Well, various other stories came out from that leaked dossier that the Telegraph reported on, including the BBC's Arabic service pushing Hamas lies and indeed its own reporters blocking gender-critical stories. No surprise there, I guess. But on Monday, moments after that story broke, the Telegraph's associate editor, Gordon Rayner, told us this.
Well, I know that it is already being looked at by the White House. We're in contact with the White House. They are reviewing it at the moment.
On Friday, the White House press secretary Caroline Levitt said, quote, "This purposefully dishonest, selectively edited clip by the BBC is further evidence that they are total 100% fake news. Every time I travel to the UK with President Trump and I'm forced to watch the BBC, it ruins my day listening to their blatant propaganda and lies." And what an attack that was on Friday night. Studs up, to say the least. Well, Daily Telegraph reporter Rob Crilly told this show this.
I made an appointment. I went in, sat down on her sofa, very well appointed. She's moved offices, the fire was roaring, rather cosy atmosphere. And of course, she was well aware of the story. And so as soon as I put it to her that, you know, there were questions to be answered by the BBC, she was only too happy. And she is a very slick operator. She knows how to give a good story. She knows the mind of the president as well. And she delivered, you read the quote there, I think she delivered a real sign of the fury of the White House in her response. And it was rather amusing.
Have the BBC been in and around the White House this week since the Panorama story dropped? And, I mean, who's the is it Cassie Kay?
They have a whole slate of reporters. I mean, you also have Gary O'Donoghue, the reporter who got the interview with Trump actually earlier this year.
How have they been this week?
He was at the White House today, I noticed. I don't know if he was in for a meeting, for a dressing down, or quite what. Now, they come and go and do their reporting. They're part of the press pool. They may, for all I know, one of their radio correspondents may have been on Air Force One this evening. I suspect that would have been rather frosty.
So I guess maybe from that we could assume perhaps that the White House hauled in some BBC reporters for a stern telling off, a bit of a rollicking. Well, pressure mounted as the week went on, with it being revealed that this weekend the BBC would apologise for its coverage to the government, as Samir Shah, the BBC chairman, was due to appear in front of the Culture Select Committee later on Monday. Well, let's fast forward to this morning when Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy said this.
I have complete confidence that both Samir Shah, the chair of the BBC, and Tim Davie are treating this with the seriousness that this demands. I do want to see that response to the Select Committee, and I will, of course, consider it and have further conversations with them about the action that they're taking.
Well, I guess it was the kiss of death, wasn't it? The complete confidence kind of football chairman style support message after they've lost 6 games on the trot, because 6 hours later, at about 6 p.m, despite Lisa Nandy's full confidence, Tim Davie resigned.
It is 16 minutes after 6 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. We have some breaking news here on GB News. Tim Davie, the Director General of the BBC, will announce his resignation this evening amid allegations of bias at the corporation. It is understood in a statement, Tim Davie says there have been some mistakes made, and as Director General, I have to take ultimate responsibility.
So, Davie gone, Turness gone. President Trump took to Truth Social shortly afterwards to say this. He wrote, "The top people in the BBC, including Tim Davie, the boss, are all quitting/fired because they were caught doctoring my very good, perfect speech of January the 6th. Thank you to The Telegraph for exposing these corrupt journalists. These are very dishonest people who try to step on the scales of a presidential election. On top of everything else, they are from a foreign country, one that many consider our #1 ally. What a terrible thing for democracy." Bev Turner, you're with me now in the Late Show Live studio. Welcome along. You had an exclusive statement from Caroline Levitt today. Just explain what you've been up to in the last 24 hours.
Well, as we said, Ben, we're on tenterhooks all week, really, to see how the White House would react. And we had that statement from Caroline Levitt earlier in the week, but nothing really for quite a few days from when this started on Monday. And then, of course, I was messaging her today, and she gave us the statement, which we can read to you now. She said the White House proudly called out their purposeful fake news, and this resignation is an admission of guilt. And then she said everyone should watch GB News. Now, Caroline Levitt, of course, is the Donald Trump spokesperson. Nobody works closer with the president than Caroline Levitt. She reads his mind, and she has to, because her job is incredibly difficult. She has to articulate to the world's press what the president is thinking on a whole range of different topics every single day. And in fact, she has spoken in the past about how she feels that GB News and her administration are aligned. She talks about fairness, she talks about honesty, she talks about closed borders. She said we share a lot of values, the things we feel strongly about. So obviously it's a huge compliment for us as a channel that the most important government in the world likes what we do.
Do you think there's going to be any more repercussions for the BBC? Do you think the 2 resignations will satisfy President Trump, or maybe will we see what he did in this side of the pond by suing 2 broadcasters? Could he go after the BBC legally? And also, you spend a lot of time in the press briefing room in the White House. Do you think maybe they'll be rescinded of their press briefing seat?
Well, obviously, social media has been awash with this story today, and some people have been saying, you know, you need to take that seat off the BBC. I don't know. None of us know yet what will happen. I don't think this is going to be the last of this story. I don't. I think the January the 7th was so problematic for that government, and I think Donald Trump will feel incredibly vindicated to have such a sort of influential scalp on that issue. This may not be the end of this story, I think.
Yeah, OK. Well, good thing you and I are here then for GB News on the Late Show Live in Washington, DC. Well, let's get the take of former BBC journalist Matthew Stadlen, who joins us live down the line now. Bev, you can get involved in this as well, our good old sparring partner, Matthew. Matthew, good evening. Thanks for your company again. Just, I guess, your general reaction to what we've seen over the past 48 hours.
There's no doubt that this is a difficult day for the BBC. That's self-evident. And I want to say, so that I'm not misinterpreted, right from the beginning, as someone who worked for the BBC myself for 8.5 years, and I was on staff, of course the BBC has to be impartial and it has to be accurate. Those are foundational values to its very existence. And of course, where it falls foul of those values, it is rightly scrutinised and should indeed be held to account. Just to focus briefly on this controversial Panorama clip, which you played a bit of earlier, and which has sparked this row with the White House, or the condemnation by Trump and his White House of the BBC. It is correct, it seems to me, that that clip was very badly edited. It did misrepresent what Trump said. However, in the clip that you showed a few minutes ago, you said that Trump had said that we are going to walk down, and I'm reading now, walk down to the Capitol and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women, and then you cut out. But what the clip went on to say is, and we're probably not going to be cheering so much for some of them. Later in the speech, Ben, Trump said that we are going to, that if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. Now, he would argue, and perhaps reasonably, that what he was talking about there, he was talking about figuratively. He wasn't saying actually go and fight. However, this was the President of the United States on January the 6th, 2021, when the atmosphere was febrile, and when there was a physical assault later on that day on the Capitol. And this was the President of the United States who was refusing to accept the democratic decision of his country. And he now has the temerity, as the most powerful man in the world, to accuse BBC journalists or former BBC management of being dishonest, of being corrupt, for which he has no evidence, and to say that what the BBC done is bad for democracy. This is a president who, when he was voted out of office, refused to accept the democratic will of the American people.
But what you've done there, Matthew, is so brilliantly illustrate why this is a problem, because your own personal opinion of Donald Trump is that you dislike him as a man, you dislike his values, you dislike his delivery method, and therefore you're effectively excusing that edit. You've just demonstrated to us why those sorts of edits are made within the BBC. And in a sense, you've worked, like me, you've worked for lots of different news organisations as well. You must see the extra leniency with which the BBC is treated in a way that GB News is never given that much rope. We are never allowed to put one foot out of line without being punished by Ofcom. Why do you think the BBC is allowed on major topics, be that illegal migration or climate change or everything throughout the pandemic? Why are they allowed to give one version of events when other channels are not allowed to?
Beverly, you've completely there misrepresented what I said. And that's why I said it so clearly right at the beginning of my response to Ben and to you. I said it is right that when the BBC makes a mistake, it is scrutinised, because it is critical to the BBC that it is both impartial and inaccurate and accurate. And in this case, in this particular panorama, I also said it clearly got it wrong. Now, I suspect, I can't tell you, this, by the way, was produced, as I understand it, by an independent production company. Now, I think panorama programmes, this is my view, should not be produced by independent production companies, because when I was at the BBC, and as I said, I was there for 8.5 years, I was imbued with the BBC editorial guidelines. I think it is much harder for external companies to be imbued in the same way. I've said they got it wrong. I've said that it should be scrutinised and the BBC should be held to account. But if this is some sort of conspiracy against the President of the United States, which of course would be appalling, then why have we got a single example of the BBC cocking it up over Trump when the BBC has made, as you know, Bev, thousands, if not likely tens of thousands of reports online, on radio and on television about Donald Trump? If they had it in for Trump, we would have many, many more examples than this cack-handed, poorly edited panorama.
Would you see a BBC documentary that depicted Joe Biden in a similarly negative way with deliberate edits?
I can't answer that question, because all we have seen, as far as I know, I haven't seen all the documentaries on Joe Biden. All we have seen is one example of a badly edited film about President Trump. What you're insinuating, Bev, is that the BBC would support Biden and not Trump. When I was at the BBC and I was staff and I worked in news for almost all of it, I can tell you hand on heart that I was religious about impartiality and balance. I worked in live political programs. It was critical to me doing my job that I did it professionally. And what's going on here is a grand smearing of the BBC by forces that want to diminish it or even tear it
Matthew,
down.
I want to ask you a question about something, if you don't mind. Why do you think this incident, isolated incident aside, why do you think the as Adam Bolton would describe it, the delicate broadcast ecology has changed so much over the past 4 or 5 years since GB News has manifested itself? The BBC licence fee payers are losing 300,000 people a year, people en masse refusing to pay for the BBC's content. And at the same time, GB News for the past 4 months has been the UK's #1 most watched news channel compared to Sky News and the BBC News channel. So obviously something is going on. The great British public are making their choices and saying, well, I'm not paying for the BBC, and alternatively, hopefully legally, they're also watching GB News as well. So something's happening. Are they all just involved in this conspiracy to bring down the BBC?
Clearly, GB News has an audience. I wouldn't appear on GB News if it didn't have an audience. Let's remember that when you say that GB News has beaten the BBC News channel and Sky News and so forth, you're not, and quite rightly, because it'd be completely false, suggesting that GB News has beaten the 1 o'clock news on BBC One, and of course it would also be an unfair comparison, but it's not beating the 1 o'clock news on BBC One, or the 6 o'clock news on BBC One, or the 10 o'clock news on BBC One, or the Today programme, which brings in millions. Millions and millions of people still consume the BBC. The fact that GB News has found an audience doesn't, in any serious way, mean that the BBC doesn't still have a major role to play in national life. I have literally, before coming onto your show, Ben, been arguing with a robot.
Yeah.
I've been arguing with Grok, which is AI on,
sounds a bit weird,
on Elon Musk's X, about the facts of my own career and when I left the BBC and when I joined LBC, where I was a presenter like Bev was.
Let me ask you a question about BBC
hang on. We live in a world, let me just quickly make this point. We live in a world of AI. We live in a world of misinformation and disinformation. X, in my view, is largely a swamp. The irony of this is that the BBC is being called fake news. The irony is that BBC has been called fake news, where it is the one organisation, or one of several organisations in this country, that, yes, it makes mistakes, but bends over backwards to be accurate. And if we lose the BBC, we will be massively diminished, both as a country and as a democracy. That doesn't mean GB News doesn't have an audience.
Matthew, the reason BBC One has millions and millions of viewers is because British people are threatened with prison if they don't cough up £175 a year. Their own verified fact-checking department, which is utterly useless, it should be shut down, gets about GB News' budget for the entire year, 30 staff. I'll tell you something, if GB News and my colleagues and the great journalists working behind the scenes in engineering, the presenters, the anchors, if we had a fraction of that BBC licence fee, we would be doing some serious damage, some great journalism. We're working, as everybody knows, we're working on a very tight budget here at GB News, and what we've achieved in a couple of years with some of the great journalism on, I don't know, grooming gangs, the illegal migration crisis, day after day we're ahead of other broadcasters telling the British people how many strange men from faraway lands are coming onto our shores. It goes on and on. That's all achieved on a budget where we have to go to the market, to the people of Britain and say, we have this, would you like to become a member? Would you like to watch our channel? We have no other option, unlike the BBC, who sends heavies round to pensioners' doors, threaten them with prison if they don't cough up, even if they don't watch the BBC. So, yeah, Matthew, I'm not surprised the BBC, who get £3.5 billion a year of licence fee money and have had a head start for decades and decades, are getting millions on BBC One.
Ben, I'm not saying it's a fair comparison to compare your audience figures to the 1 o'clock news, the 6 o'clock news, or the 10 o'clock news. What I'm saying is there is an enormous chunk of our population that still wants to consume that content. And I'm also saying to you that it is vitally important that we have a broadcaster which, yes, it makes some mistakes. It's staffed by human beings.
Maybe they should do their job then.
Is committed to impartiality and to accuracy. Just to take one statement you just made, you said that the BBC Verify department is something like utterly useless. You would never get a BBC presenter. Hang on, you'd never get a BBC presenter
I'm not
saying that
by the taxpayer, Matthew.
Ben, listen to me, because otherwise, what's the point of having me on your show at 1 a.m. in London? That you would never get a BBC presenter saying on a BBC News programme that GB News is rubbish or GB News is this, that or the other. Why? Because they are not allowed.
Newsnight,
they are not allowed.
A few years ago, they had 3 panellists on Newsnight. You stop talking now, it's my turn, it's my show. Newsnight sat there a year or so ago with 3 panellists all nodding their head like the Churchill insurance dog saying, oh yes, GB News should be shut down, and the host agreed with them. No balance whatsoever. What an absolute joke. That statement you've made is BS.
Just wait.
Yes.
Just wait. Let me finish my sentence quickly. You're pointing to an example, and if you're right about that, then they should have made clear, the presenter should have made clear that GB News has an audience. Has an audience. You relentlessly, as it seems is your right, push your views, sometimes extremely, in my view, toxic views. The BBC is not allowed to do that. And I want to live in a country where we still have a broadcaster, which, by the way, is a public service broadcaster. It's not a state broadcaster. It is not controlled by the government. It is funded by us. It represents us, where we still have a broadcaster committed to impartiality and accuracy. And that doesn't mean I won't come on GB News and have arguments with you. And I do think that one strength of GB News is that it does bring on people with very different views to its presenters, but the BBC is a great strength of our country, and many people in this country would miss it if it went.
I've just been looking up. Do you remember the Trusted News Initiative? Does that phrase mean anything to you?
Yeah.
It was an organisation that popped up during the pandemic, didn't it? An alliance of media organisations. The Trusted News Initiative. It all sounded so benevolent. And on their homepage, big sentence in the middle of it, why climate change should be at the heart of modern journalism. Now that is an example, and that is one topic, and I've got many more, where the BBC have decided this is fact, and nobody that questions that climate change might be anything other than man-made is allowed on. That's it. It's not true. They shut down debate.
Matthew, I appreciate your company. I appreciate you staying up at this late hour, and I enjoy discussing these things with you. I keep saying
the BBC has plenty of people who are sceptical about net zero on its shows, and you know that. It has Richard Tice on. It has Zia Yusuf on. It has Nigel Farage on. That is not accurate, Bev, and that's why we need the BBC.
They're all politicians.
We're going to move on.
They're all politicians.
Matthew, thanks for your company. Thank you for sharing ideas and debates. Appreciate it. See you next time. Let's get the take of US political commentator Steve Gill, who's been patiently waiting on the line whilst we've been sparring with Matthew. Steve, sorry about that. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Just your take, please, as a US political commentator. President Trump, the White House, has been accused by some quarters of getting involved in domestic affairs, but I don't know, I guess he had no choice. The implications of what BBC Panorama did on that day were huge.
Well, and I have to completely agree with Caroline Levitt. You should be watching GB News. I've been telling people that for a long time. They just don't listen to me as much as they listen to Caroline. With due respect to your guest, when you look at the news media, it's not just what they do, it's what they don't cover that reveals their bias. It's not just what they cover, it's what they choose not to cover. And the BBC and other mainstream outlets in the U.S. have been guilty of that all along. And again, with due respect to your guest, he edited, showing that it is not just the top at the BBC that has the bias and the propaganda and the lack of credibility. It runs all the way through those who do and have worked there. He edited the quote about Donald Trump on January 7th and left this exact quote out of his commentary. I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voice heard. Not only did the BBC edit that out, your guest just edited that out as well, showing that even after you leave the BBC, apparently you're still infected with the bias and the propaganda that makes them, if Donald Trump was giving them a nickname, Britain's bogus channel.
Steve, it's interesting watching the news media here in America because it is incredibly partisan. You turn on Fox News and you get a very right-wing version of events. You turn on CNN, MSNBC, and you get a very left-wing version of events. And that's quite shocking for us as Brits. Because actually, in the UK, because of Ofcom, we have this very regulated, and I think that is not a bad thing, because you realise that channels like us are held to account and we have to provide both sides of a story. We work very hard to do that. And yet, because the BBC is self-governed, in your experience, you spend a lot of time in the UK, do you watch the BBC and see a lack of impartiality? Or I think you summed it up beautifully there when you said it's not what they say, it's often what they don't say on big topics such as illegal migration, climate change, the Reform Party, for instance. Do you see that, Steve?
Absolutely. And I watch, MSNBC, CNN here in the United States as well, again, to see not only what they cover and how they cover it with bias and lack of fairness, but what they don't cover, the stories they eliminate, they don't pay any attention to. And the same thing happens, obviously, in Britain as well. Here's the concern that the BBC should really have. They have been exposed in this particular case of basically lying, of editing and lying about the actual news. If they'll lie about that, what else are they lying about? How do they retain their credibility on every other news story when you've been caught with your hand in the cookie jar, crumbs all over your chest, and you're trying to deny that you got anything out of the cookie jar?
Yeah, pants down. Steve, just one last question before I let you go. Do you think President Trump will pursue legal action now against the BBC as he did CBS and ABC in America?
I think it's a little bit harder just because, again, it's a British-based channel. It's different than the First Amendment and the restrictions that we have and libel and slander here in the U.S. I think you'd have a much, much harder case there. But I think it should be a lesson for those in the media here that the days of selective editing, of outright misrepresentation should be coming to an end. And we've seen some of the biggest major media outlets here pay the price for going way too far.
Okay, Steve Gill, thank you very much. Appreciate your company. That's US political commentator Steve Gill. Bev, I think you're making an exit. You're going to get a G&T or something?
Yeah, can I go now? Let you do your show.
Can you get me some throat sweets or something?
I will, I will.
Sound a bit more competent.
I'll be back tomorrow.
Thank you. Yeah, see you a bit later on.
Yeah.
Still ahead on The Late Show Live. Lots more on the huge story, of course, that's making waves on both sides of the Atlantic. The BBC's Director General and the Chief Exec of BBC News have quit over the doctored President Trump clip. And, of course, we have that exclusive statement from the White House Press Secretary, Caroline Leavitt, who's given Bev Turner and The Late Show Live a bit more additional commentary tonight. But next, I'll speak to the mother of 3 children who's raising her kids alone after the father self-deported from the United States. He's gone back to Kenya after fearing President Trump's immigration crackdown would tear his family apart. She's live next on The Late Show Live. Welcome back to The Late Show Live. Now, a bit of a change of gear for you. A father of 3 has self-deported from the United States, flying 8,000 miles back to Kenya after fearing President Trump's immigration crackdown would tear his family apart. So Samuel Kangethi, who'd lived and worked legally in Michigan, the United States, for years, left his wife and kids behind after a green card blunder made him fear being picked up by ICE and locked in detention. ICE, of course, being the immigration authorities this side of the pond. His wife, Latavia, says she's now raising the children alone, though since the story broke on CNN, donors and well-wishers have poured in more than $15,000 on GoFundMe to help the family out. Well, joining us down the line now to discuss this is the mother of 3 herself, Latavia. Latavia, thanks for your company and thank you for sharing your family's plight. Just explain to us, please, your husband, he's gone home to Kenya. When did he go? When could he maybe come back? And what was the blunder with the green card?
So he did leave in late August, just before the children started school. The reason why he left was because he was in fear of you know, immigration stepping in and taking him another place outside of where he resides where he lived in Kenya, where he's originally from. And then we really don't know too much as to whether or not he'll be able to come back. He has a court hearing, I believe it's on the 23rd of January of 2026. So we are very much so hopeful that that goes well for him. I know everyone here really misses him a lot, especially his children. But it has been really hard on all three of them, everyone involved.
Yeah, the poor babies, of course, left without their father. He came over to the United States initially on my panel here, by the way, Victoria and Angelina. He came over, of course, first of all to the United States on a student visa, right? Yes. And then he married, then he got divorced, and then he married again. He got married to you. He was granted an extension to stay in the United States. He could still be here legally until January. So my question, I guess, is why has he decided to self-deport when he's been allowed to stay until at least the court case?
Yeah, so it really, as I mentioned in a lot of other interviews we did, it started to kick off shortly after the holidays, I'd say around New Year's, once, you know, the administration changed over. And I think it just put a lot of fear on him. And I could only imagine being in another country where you don't really feel like you really have a place there, a permanency, even though he's never been in trouble. So I think it took a bit of a mental toll on him. And then from that point, he started seeing things on the news just like others. And it really did scare him to the point where he was like, if I sacrificed leaving, you know, my children wouldn't have to go through even more trauma, seeing me getting taken away by ICE. That was something that we really couldn't change for him. We tried for a very long time up until the point that he left.
Victoria, President Trump's fans, the MAGA support group, they, you know, celebrate the fact that illegal migration now in the US is down to pretty much zero. Would you argue cases like this is the collateral damage? I mean, he's not been kicked out, but he self-deported out of complete fear.
Well, you know, I think that the immigration system is definitely very complicated, as I've talked about on the show numerous times before. It's one I've been through myself. It's one that my husband's been through. And so, you know, my heart definitely goes out to you. But, you know, do you... I'm sorry, I've totally forgotten your name.
Latavia.
Latavia. Sorry for that. Latavia, do you have confidence in this administration, and particularly in Secretary Noem, who has said that people that self-deport are going to be able to come back, or are you a little bit doubtful of that rhetoric?
I'm hopeful, but at the same time doubtful, just because of the simple fact that we all know immigration is very much so, you know, a broken system. I wish that there was a lot better of a way that we could support people that come here for the right thing, but unfortunately, you know, at times like now, that appears to be the main focus. So I think I'm just holding more and leaning more into my faith more than anything at this point, because it's really much like an unknown thing that we have going on. It's not normal for your children and your family members to have to endure something like this.
And Latavia, what's Samuel up to in Kenya? What's his day-to-day looking like? Is he working? Of course, you've raised £15,000 through donations to help fund your family, but I mean, what's Samuel up to in Kenya? And where is he? Nairobi?
Yeah. So he's in Nairobi. He has family there. He's got his sisters and brother, and then his mom's still there. So right now he's not working. It's pretty hard to find a job there, I believe, even with his background and all the education he has. So I think he's just taking a lot of time to see friends and family that he hasn't gotten to see in a very long time.
Okay. Angelina, this is, I guess, the price you pay if you come in on a student visa. There's an issue with your green card. You have to go, and hopefully, as Victoria said, the administration, or at least the immigration authorities, will credit Samuel with some good faith, the fact that he's self-deported. But I guess this is what people voted for. No, this is why President Trump had a massive landslide victory.
I mean, first of all, my heart goes out to your children and your family. I'm sure this is a very difficult time for them right now. I can't imagine how traumatic it is to have your father separated from you. Well, the children, their father.
Oh, sorry.
And look, I think this is a result also of just Trump's approach to immigration. It's been so chaotic, and we're not being careful on a case-by-case basis of who we're deporting. And I think that parents especially of American citizens and someone who's married to an American citizen, I think that we should really be looking into these cases at the highest scrutiny to be, is it worth tearing these families apart and causing this type of trauma? And I think this is the type of backlash we're getting from having such a chaotic approach to making sure that all the illegal immigrants are out of our country, instead of just looking at, okay, maybe this person does have a place in our society. They did come here originally legally. Their green card is back and forth, but how can we make sure that this family stays together?
Yeah, Latavia, last word to you.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
I was just saying, last word to you, just the final word. Where can people donate if they want to, and are you hopeful of getting Samuel back in Michigan?
We are hopeful, especially for the children. They're missing him a lot, doing a lot of therapy. And we have a GoFundMe page set up. The link is on the recent CNN release of like a interview that we had done with him. So.
Okay, well, look, best of luck to you. Love to the kids. Whatever the political circumstances, having a father away from their kids isn't ideal. I'd know myself being away from my kids. So, yeah, best of luck to you, Latavia, and maybe we'll catch up in January. Yeah. Right, let us know what you think on that. gbnews.com/you'll say. I guess, a sad state of affairs. You were right in your comment. You said when you break federal laws, you suffer the consequences. There are many government programs to aid people to obtain green cards and US citizenship. People go for years without taking care of business, then get excited when they know they're in the wrong. Right, still ahead on The Late Show Live.
Hello, sir. Nice to see you. Thank you for your service. Happy Veterans Day. There we go. Great guy. What a man.
That guy there was 102 years old, a World War II veteran. Remembrance Day, of course, in the UK yesterday. I was in Washington, DC's version, meeting veterans here this side of the pond. We'll discuss that next, including the big question which was posed this week by a British veteran. Was it all worth it? This is The Late Show Live. Back in a few seconds.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Low pressure in charge of our weather for the next few days. Today, a mixture of sunny spells, heavy showers, but mild for the time of year and rather breezy, particularly around the coasts. A wet start this morning, though, across much of Scotland. Outbreaks of rain here, cloudy across Northern Ireland. Elsewhere, a mixture of some bright spells, but areas of showery rain pushing north and eastwards as we move through the morning. Into the afternoon, some of this rain will be heavy at times across the Midlands into East Anglia, North East England as we move through the day. Temperatures generally 12 to 14 Celsius across England and Wales, a little chillier across Northern Ireland and Scotland, here around 11 or 12 Celsius. So just fresher for most compared to the weekend. And then as we move through into this evening time, we can see it remains unsettled across southern parts of England and Wales. Further showers and fairly blustery along the coasts. Areas of showery rain across the northern part of Wales into northern England, southern Scotland, Northern Ireland. Much of Scotland seeing some clear spells this evening. A few showers, particularly in the west, driest conditions in the east, and under any clear spells, temperatures dropping to around 6 or 7 Celsius already. As we move into the early hours, further showers are expected, though they will ease for a time, allowing some longer clear spells to develop. But it remains quite breezy, particularly around the coast, with then further rain heading into southwest England and Wales by the end of the night. Under the clearest skies, temperatures dropping away, a cooler night than of late, 5 or 6 Celsius in the towns and cities. Some mist and fog patches once more, but it's all changed through the day on Tuesday. Cloud and rain pushing northeastwards, accompanied by some brisk winds. It will stay driest across central and northern parts of Scotland. There's some showers possible across the islands here, and generally for all an unsettled day to come. Again, some maybe southern and eastern parts holding on to some dry weather, but largely cloudy here. Very mild, 15, 16 Celsius, cooler across Scotland.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome back. Now, of course, yesterday was Remembrance Sunday in Blighty. I was actually quite sad to have missed it and to play my own part in the commemorations. But I did the second best thing, which was go down to the Veterans Day Parade here in DC, which is pretty much the American version, and see what was going on. Let's take a quick look.
I just want to show you, Nana viewers and listeners, this one chap here who is a 102-year-old World War II veteran. It's the chap in the front wearing the cap. Let's see if he can give us a wave this side. It's I wonder what he'd think of the gentleman who appeared on ITV Breakfast in the week. His name was Alec. I've forgotten the guy's surname. The 100-year-old Brit who said it wasn't worth fighting for. He said the country, the UK, is worse than it was back in 1945. Hello, sir. Nice to see you. Thank you for your service. Happy Veterans Day. There we go. Great guy. What a man.
Very important to be here today. Honoring the vets, plain and simple. There's no politics or anything involved with this. We're here to represent the soldiers that fought and are still here today helping each other out. And we also look forward to helping the veterans of the future.
There's a concern in the UK that Remembrance Day, remembering our heroes and warriors of yesteryear, is getting slowly eroded as the generations go on. Do you feel that concern here in America?
It seems that the history is getting lost. It's not, the kids don't know about it. I ask kids about things and they don't know World War I, World War II, and how, more importantly, how things are connected.
Yeah.
Why things happen, how things happen. So, but there's a lot of groups out there trying to fill those voids.
Yeah.
And the great people, there's still some veterans of World War II, and they are awesome. They have stories. And
there's the guy down there, the 102-year-old. He looks in great shape.
Victor, he drinks beers.
Victor.
And his whole attitude on life is, I'm just here to live.
Yeah, 102 years old and still sinking beers. Good man, well done you. Joining me in Washington is my panel, US political reporter for the Daily Mail, Victoria Churchill, and the journalist and broadcaster, Angelina Mackay. Panel, welcome along. Thank you for your company. I'm not sure if you guys saw in the week in the UK, sorry, excuse my voice, I think it's almost on the edge of a cliff, the veteran, the 100-year-old veteran who told ITV Breakfast about the fact he thought the UK today was in a worse place than it was in 1945. If you've not seen the clip, let's just remind ourselves what he said.
My message is, I can see in my mind's eye those rows and rows of white stones of all the hundreds of my friends and everybody else that gave their lives for what? The country of today. No, I'm sorry. The sacrifice wasn't worth the result that it is now.
So I would have loved to have asked the 102-year-old today in DC whether he thought the same thing. He was parading. I thought it was not appropriate. But what's your take on that clip you've just seen there, Victoria?
Yeah, I mean, just look at some of the debates we've been having, particularly on the American right over the last couple of weeks, particularly about Jews and the Holocaust. The latest surveys show that almost 2/3 of Generation Z, that's my generation, I'm very sad to say, isn't aware that the death toll for Jews in the Holocaust was 6 million. 48% of people my age and about 5 to 10 years younger couldn't name a single concentration camp or ghetto out of the 40,000 that existed. I mean, those are shocking statistics, and I think that those who fought, you know, their work is also being disregarded by younger generations, which is very unfortunate because they are the greatest generation. They secured freedoms not only here in the US, but also in the UK. And so many in my generation and younger take it for granted.
Do you think there's a risk, Angelina, that the importance and the significance of remembrance events, as we call it in the UK, or, you know, Veterans Day here, is being diluted as the generations go on? Soon there'll be one day where people just don't know what the Second World War was or the sacrifice that was laid down.
No, I disagree. The Holocaust Museum is a very popular museum in DC. It gets lots of visitors every year. I personally go regularly. It is a great way to remember what happened. We have military parades all over the United States, and I don't think that people are forgetting it. It's also very heavily built into our curriculum as Americans. So I very much disagree with that statement.
Okay. All right, let's bring in Paul Cox, who's down the line from London, GB News superstar comedian. Paul, I'm not sure if you saw the clip of me today down in DC at their Veterans Day, but yeah, well, what's your thoughts on the alleged erasure of our war heroes, our warriors, and, you know, the lives that were laid on the line for the freedoms we enjoy today?
Look, I think listening to Alec, a 100-year-old veteran,
on another UK channel earlier this weekend was profound. I actually had a debate this evening on a previous show on GB News with Bill Rammell, who's an ex-Labour MP, which is akin to the Democrats, for those in the US. And he said that the veteran was wrong, and he's entitled to his opinion, but it's not right. And that tells me exactly where we are. That's astonishing to me, that we can get to a point now where a guy, God bless him, still alive, fought for this country, fought for the West as a whole, fought for all of our freedoms, everybody on this panel, alongside our US allies, and has reached a point in his very long life where he no longer believes that what he fought for was worth fighting for, essentially. And not just that, the two interviewers patronised him. Genuinely patronised him. Galloway said that she was sorry he thought that way. That's no apology whatsoever. And Rayat and the other chap, who his name escapes me now, was right on the tip of my tongue, almost started an argument with him. And we know why that might have been. Look, I think this weekend, both in the US and the UK, we deserve to stop the debate and just pay homage to the ladies and gentlemen that fought for our freedoms. It's absolutely right. It's wonderful to see that the veterans in the US feel the same way. I think we've actually arrived at a juncture across the West now where we've lost our way. We've totally lost our way. We've lost our way to the extent that many, and I'm afraid to say on the left, don't believe we've lost our way and believe that the way we're headed is the right direction. It's not. We need to value our history. We need to understand where history led us, Ben.
And also, I just don't understand people like Bill Rammell who say, well, no, Alec, the 100-year-old who served in World War II, is wrong. Look, Alec was the guy who was alive in 1945, fighting in the World War. He was alive in Britain in the time he's referencing. I don't think Bill Rammell was. I don't know how old is Bill Rammell. Let's have a look. Bill Rammell age. So how would he know? He was born in 1959. So Alec has a factual memory of life in Britain back then. Bill Rammell doesn't. So I just don't understand how they can poo-poo an assessment from somebody like Alec. Well, Victoria, let me just ask you very quickly. So go on, Paul, go on.
Sorry, all I was going to say is Bill needs to say that. He needs to parrot that because it underpins everything he believes. And that's the trouble. When someone who was actually there from history says that they fought for a reason that no longer exists, much to his sadness, someone like Bill and many people of his ilk very much will either have to disagree with that guy or look at themselves, and we know which option they often take.
Victoria, tell us please how veterans are treated in the United States. Generally, are they happy with the way they're looked after by the government and charities after they serve? What's the lay of the land?
Yeah, definitely the existence of veterans charities is quite robust when it comes to the government. I think a lot of people wish that they could do better, particularly on healthcare. This was something that the first Trump administration really pushed, is this idea that veterans could use their benefits outside of the actual VA system. And I think, there's definitely been positive feedback from that because government-run healthcare for the most part doesn't work very well, at least not here in the U.S. And so a lot of veterans, they have, months, if not years-long waiting lists for getting the care that they receive or really that they've earned with their service. And so I think that was a really great step by the first Trump administration to let them use those benefits outside of that government system.
And Angelina, I was reading today around a report from 2022, so the figures may have differed now in 25, but 17 veterans a day kill themselves in the United States, 17 every day. And in 2022, this report focusing on Iraq and Afghanistan, people who had served there, more than 50% of veterans who'd served in those two conflicts had admitted to at one point considering suicide. Is that still a big problem, are you aware of, in the United States?
Yeah, I mean, suicide is the 12th biggest killer in America, right? So that's right up there with kidney disease and liver disease. So suicide's a major problem in America. And I don't think that we're giving vets enough resources that they need. There are a lot of veterans who are out here homeless as well, dealing with the trauma. And because they don't know how to assimilate themselves back into society, they're just left out there. So I don't think that we treat our veterans with the respect and human dignity that they deserve.
Although I would argue, I think maybe you guys treat your veterans probably better than ours. For example, you just silly things, maybe, which make a big difference to people's lives. You're allowed to board airplanes first. Veterans are the first group on board. Forget first class or business. The veterans go first. You get big discounts in petrol stations or gas stations, in restaurants, in shops. You've got lots of businesses offering perks and so on to veterans. Paul, how do you think we treat our veterans in the UK?
Well, we've got a huge homeless veteran issue in the UK, and I think that the part of the problem here, and I think it's slightly less of a problem in the US from my perspective, that patriotism is not valued as highly in the UK any longer in the same way that it is in the US. You're much more likely to fly the US flag in a school or at a public event, or be proud to do so. I know we have a lot of division in the US as we do in the UK, but it's almost, I just spent my weekend travelling around doing comedy in the UK, and I happened to go to a couple of places that were celebrating the Remembrance Sunday in a way that you just wouldn't see in London, for instance. This was out in Dorset and in Surrey, counties well outside of London. And what I was astonished by is how people feel so almost squeamish to be supportive of this. To see the Union Jack flying sometimes in certain parts of the UK makes people feel uncomfortable. That's a huge problem, Ben.
Yeah, well, sometimes you get called a bigot or a racist for flying your own flag, which, let me tell you, Paul, if that happened over here, if you went and found an American flying a flag and said, hang on a minute, you're a bit bigoted, I'll tell you, I don't think the outcome would be well received. Paul, thanks very much for your time, appreciate it, and we'll catch up soon. Just one quick note, if anyone's watching this tonight or listening and you're having personal troubles, you're thinking of suicide or anything like that, go to Samaritans.org, that's Samaritans.org, and you can call Samaritans at any time, even now at this hour, on 116 123. That's 116 123. And just remember, there's somebody always there to talk to. Right, very last bit of news, guys. The government shutdown seems to be coming to an end. Angelina, do you have any latest? What's the latest? I think the Senate have agreed potentially to go ahead and open back up the government.
Yeah, I mean, the government shutdown ending, that would be amazing. We have a humanitarian issue. I know my brother personally, he's in the military, and my niece, you know, they're waiting on their paycheck, so
just
very
explain
excited.
What the problem's been. How does the US work in just 30 seconds? Why has there been a disagreement with the budget? How does it work?
So there's been a disagreement with the budget, specifically regarding healthcare. Now, the Democrats are saying that the Obama healthcare cuts are going to expire and healthcare rates will go up. Now, the Republicans saying that's not going to be a problem. Trump has also come out and said that he's planning to give taxpayers a $2,000 refund next year, and so that may, help with that situation. But right now, they have agreed that they will open it up through January. I believe they'll vote on the healthcare in December.
And Victoria, unlike the UK, where the government of the day decides the budget, where to spend the money, of course here the Democrats and the Republicans both have to agree, right?
Yeah, they both have to agree, and of course this big holdup in the Senate is getting to that 60-vote threshold for fiscal legislation. So, it looks like some Democrats are going to cave. Interestingly enough, not Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, who is of course the head of the Democrats, but some of his rank and file, it looks like, will switch. And then also this funding package has to go back to the House as well.
Yeah, okay, and it means that the museums will open in DC, it means the botanical gardens will open, so I've got 2 days off now, so maybe, hopefully, if they're open, I'll go and fill my boots. Thank you for your company tonight. Thank you, panel, really appreciate it. Thank you for enduring my voice as well on the Let's Show Live. Bev will be with you tomorrow. For now, good night, sweet dreams, see you soon.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Low pressure in charge of our weather for the next few days. Today, a mixture of sunny spells, heavy showers, but mild for the time of year and rather breezy, particularly around the coasts. A wet start this morning, though, across much of Scotland. Outbreaks of rain here, cloudy across Northern Ireland. Elsewhere, a mixture of some bright spells, but areas of showery rain pushing north and eastwards as we move through the morning. Into the afternoon, some of this rain will be heavy at times across the Midlands into East Anglia, North East England as we move through the day. Temperatures generally 12 to 14 Celsius across England and Wales, a little chillier across Northern Ireland and Scotland, here around 11 or 12 Celsius. So just fresher for most compared to the weekend. And then as we move through into this evening time, we can see it remains unsettled across southern parts of England and Wales. Further showers and fairly blustery along the coasts. Areas of showery rain across the northern part of Wales into northern England, southern Scotland, Northern Ireland. Much of Scotland seeing some clear spells this evening. A few showers, particularly in the west, driest conditions in the east, and under any clear spells, temperatures dropping to around 6 or 7 Celsius already. As we move into the early hours, further showers are expected, though they will ease for a time, allowing some longer clear spells to develop. But it remains quite breezy, particularly around the coast, with then further rain heading into southwest England and Wales by the end of the night. Under the clearest skies, temperatures dropping away, a cooler night than of late, 5 or 6 Celsius in the towns and cities. Some mist and fog patches once more, but it's all changed through the day on Tuesday. Cloud and rain pushing northeastwards, accompanied by some brisk winds. It will stay driest across central and northern parts of Scotland, though some showers possible across the islands here, and generally for all an unsettled day to come. Again, some maybe southern and eastern parts holding on to some dry weather, but largely cloudy here. Very mild, 15, 16 Celsius, cooler across Scotland.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.